And good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. I'll call this meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen to order at 7 p.m. and we will begin as usual with public input on matters that are not on our agenda tonight. Do I have anything? In the back, yes.
Carolyn McDonald, 76 North Shore Drive. Mine is, I'm trying to gather information on three things. The first is my road is about to be assessed, so I'm wondering if there's something out there. I've been looking out on the site. I'd like to know what happens when the assessor comes. I know he's coming with a letter or she's coming with a letter, but what do they do? Do they walk through my house? Do they walk around it? And how do they come to the dollar amount? So I'm basically looking at, is there a brochure out there? Is there something on the website that I've missed? So that's my first question in terms of input. The second thing is, you guys are doing a great job on the Triple E. I love the stuff. I got the message at 5 o'clock this afternoon that explained that we were being sprayed tonight. But I had a couple of other questions. One was, I have a pet. Should I close the doors, the windows, turn on the air conditioning, shut it off? When can I take my dog out for the final, whatever, the final, I call it last call. And then the third question I have is about the status of the lake. I live on North Shore Drive, and I find it remarkably different. We're getting so much great information about Triple E, and we're getting zilch about the status of the lake. And we have a public access. I don't think there's anything posted down there about not swimming and not getting in the water. And also, we're not getting information around when testing is being done, when we're getting information back. I walk my dog twice a day.
Can I take a stab at your three issues?
Okay.
So first of all, there's nothing on our agenda tonight about any of those three issues, but let me take a stab at something. As far as the assessment goes, you can expect somebody to show up at your house, and they typically do want access inside. I don't think they can complete an assessment without getting access inside. It doesn't take very long. My house was reassessed 2 or 3 years ago. How they reach a dollar figure is a very good question. You're going to have to go to the Board of Assessors office and ask them that, or go to one of their meetings. I frankly don't know.
Okay.
The actual process is very easy. I do think they call ahead of time and find a time that's convenient for you.
Excellent.
As far as Triple E, now this board has no jurisdiction over either Triple E or the closing of the lake. That's both.
I'm going to the Board of Health meeting at 5 o'clock on Thursday.
So I was going to mention the meeting on Thursday, is it 5, of the Board of Health?
It's at 5 o'clock.
Is where you want to go for information on the lake. I mean, all I can tell you is what you probably already know. The lake was closed, or the beach was closed, or both, around August 18th, I think, because of the appearance of the algae bloom. I do believe that some tests have been done, but whether or not they got the results, I don't know. But they can tell you Tuesday or rather Thursday at their meeting.
And the Lake Boone Commission, there's a meeting tomorrow night for the Lake Boone Commission. Would it be appropriate for this to be brought up with them, or?
I think you can bring it up, even if it's not on their agenda, you can bring it the same way you're bringing it up now.
Okay.
And they'll tell you what they know. I want it on the Triple E, that's one of the things I was going to hit in my comments. So just today, the Mosquito Control Project announced they're going to be, the state announced they're going to be doing aerial spraying. Sometime beginning tonight into the next week, not necessarily here tonight, but within the next week, I think basically between dusk and dawn, there'll be low-flying aerial spraying. There is information on the town website about what to do and how to prepare, and you definitely want to close your windows. Now, I understand that, I haven't looked at it myself, I understand there's a link on the town website. I know that the Conservation Commission today sent something out on their Facebook page that has some fairly detailed information on it. It's a good question about the pets. I have pets myself and I don't know the answer. But that's where you would find what
So I've been going out, it came out at 5 o'clock, 4:35 o'clock, and it was out. I'm connected to the message board, so when you guys send something out, I get it. And I've been reading through it, I guess I have to look at it again because I'm not sure if it had anything about window closings, air conditioning.
And I don't have that information, but everything we have, there is a link to it on the website. I hear it's hard to find on the website. That's why I know at least the Conservation Commission sent it out by Facebook. The town administrator wanted to add something on
So as part of my activities report, the most current information that perhaps isn't available, I just got late this afternoon. As it relates to the website information and the spraying,
Yes.
what I have in front of me that should be on the site now speaks to how to care for your pets and protect them, mosquito-proof your home, beware of peak mosquito hours. They go through a number of safety precautions to take, bee owners and what you should do.
Yeah, I've read all that. I'm calling my vet tomorrow to see if I need to get shots for my dog, and she's not put out after dark. So I've read that.
And they'll continue as they can to update. With regard to this spraying, it is true, as Jim said, the process on ag and DPH at the state level, so we have no control over it.
Exactly.
Both of them are doing it. This area is going to begin this evening. We're not certain exactly when Stow will be affected, but in the next couple of days, they will have it all done. And the rest of it. With regard to assessments, there's commercial software package, and the town contracts through the assessors to commercial appraisers, and there's software with algorithms that set that up, and the requirement under the state statutes is for each community to be within from 97 to 100% on market value, and those are all programmed. You just go to the assessors, they can explain that to you.
I think I went out to the website and I can punch in my
Yeah.
thing and there, so I know how to do that.
So ma'am, I gotta move on. I obviously got a
Dude,
crowded
could I
room.
just quickly, because everybody's
Of
here,
course, yes.
so nobody will be left when I talk about this in 2 hours.
It's true.
So, with regard to water testing at the lake, it was the case, and is the case, that there were no certified labs close to us
Right.
for that bacteria. Had to be walked down to Rhode Island.
Yep.
2 tests DPH required before you can go back in the water. Right now, what's been online and was used on the reverse 911 is that
Right.
stay out of the water, keep your pets out of the water until those 2 tests are completed and the results are published.
Do we
Okay?
have any idea when
And
that's
yes, so I'm going to
happen?
finish that comment. So the first test, we should have the results by tomorrow or thereabouts. And the
Okay.
second one, which is required, should be shortly thereafter, and both results will be put on the website and otherwise disseminated by the Board of Health as soon as those results are in.
Yeah.
And so, at this moment, the caution is stay out of the water until you get those results. So the worst case is, they come back and say, you can now go back in the water. So, stay out of the water and keep your pets out of the water is what I would recommend until you've got the results.
Should we post it on the public access? People are still dropping boats off and fishing in the lake and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, I've found information, I don't know, so, there are people who will ignore what's on the websites and what's on, the paper's been given online information as late as this afternoon from our health agent.
Yep.
I've encouraged the Board of Health to, again, access the reverse E911. There's 6,000 phone numbers on that, including
Yes.
land and email. They're doing what they can to
Right.
keep as updated as possible. But I'm a simple person. The first thing I say is stay in at night against the mosquitoes.
Yes.
Stay out of the water, you and your pets, until somebody tells you differently, right? And for those that have wells, and we do, with regard to PFAS, at this moment, it's nothing new other than the fact that a regional forum is being put together by Kate Hogan, Representative Kate Hogan, DEP, and our Board of Health, and hopefully they'll have a meeting scheduled soon so that all of you can get the update on that. But what I would say to you, and I have my own well where I am, go have your water tested. Okay? Until it's been tested, if you fear, go to bottled water.
Yeah.
And there is called granular activated carbon filtration for this, so you can put filtration bolted on to whatever your filtration is now
I have that.
to get rid of it. So, and all 3 of those, the simplest things I would keep in mind, they're directly certain, they're not remote, they're not speculative. Taking it in yourself, there's simple things to be safe on all of those right now, and I would do it.
Well, the Board of Health, I think, is doing Triple E and the lake issue on Thursday. That's what I...
Yeah, so it's on their agenda for Thursday, so I
Thank
would
you.
encourage all of you to attend that.
Thank you. Is there anything else on any other issue? Sir?
I represent the Lake Boone Association, and it was just really bad timing to have this not tested earlier. I
What's your
understand
name,
it takes
and
a
then just,
long
what's your
time.
name and address?
Dan Nicholson, Sudbury Road, 281. The timing in the future, I think, should be a little bit more acknowledged that there are a significant amount of people affected by closing a lake.
And you realize we have no jurisdiction over it.
Okay, just putting this out there that we could have done better getting that sample down to Rhode Island. If it takes, it takes 7 days, 8 days to get it down there, we're going too slow.
I assume you're going to show up Thursday and talk to the Board of Health
Sure.
about this. Okay. On this final word on this Board of Health issue, and now I'm going to segue into Chairman's comments. We are having an update from the Board of Health on several things at our next meeting, September 24th. In addition to this whole lake issue, they are dealing with, as we've discussed, EEE and PFAS. I happen to think that PFAS, in the long term, is probably the most important issue, but we're going to have them in to update everyone on that. I hope that in 2 weeks, September 24th, EEE is a thing of the past, and we'll see where the lake issue stands. I think that's, you've all gotten all the information we have on the Board of Health issues, which is not a lot more than you had, but that's where it stands. Please, if you're concerned about that, show up on Thursday at their meeting. Going further with Chairman's comments, we already covered the EEE thing, which I wanted to cover. I want to mention one other thing. I think we should mark the loss of a gentleman from town, Gregor Trinkhouse Randall, a well-known citizen, an employee, longtime employee of the State Board of Library Commissioners, frequent speaker at town meeting, often on library issues, but not only that, frequent rider of the Pan Mass Challenge, Scottish dancer, headed up the local Scottish Dancing Club, lost his battle with cancer in late August. I just want to comment that from a personal point of view, Gregor was really a tower of strength. I will never forget, I was on a bike ride in Boxborough, and I hadn't seen Gregor for a while because I knew he'd been going through cancer treatments, and a guy passed me who looked a hell of a lot like Gregor, and I turned around and I caught up to him, and sure enough it was him, 3 days out from chemo treatments, out for a 40-mile ride, and that was 2 years ago. So I think he deserves a moment of silence in his honor. And thank you. And meeting minutes. Maureen, you've given us minutes for our last meeting, August 13th, and members of the board, I made a few suggested changes to those. You'll see them marked in red. Thank you for that. In Chairman's comments, changed West Nile virus to EEE. I may have said West Nile virus, but I meant EEE. One sentence that I added, I checked the tape, I did say that in the honeypot discussion, and I cleaned up the discussion about role of town administrator search committee. Further comments from members of the board on the minutes of August 13th.
I was not there, so I don't.
You did not give your usual thorough review?
Oh, I read them.
Oh, okay.
They told you guys were.
But you weren't there, so you
I
can't.
wasn't here.
Any other comments?
I was not there either.
All right. All right.
Just
Mr. Burke.
Just briefly in liaison reports, I think I said that there were possible changes to the FCC financing regulations. They have not yet been adopted, but it does look like it's in the works.
By the way, I meant to thank you, so just add possible. There's an article in the latest MMA newsletter, September 1, which we all get copies of, on those FCC changes. It's really a very good article. I finally understand the issue, I think. So, hearing no further comments, do I have a motion?
I move to accept the meeting minutes of the August 13th, 2019 meeting as, with amendments.
Motion been made and seconded to adopt the minutes of August 13th as amended. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And
Abstain.
opposed and abstentions? Are you abstaining, Mr. Ryan?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. 3 in favor, 2 abstentions, Maureen? And then we have an old set of minutes from February 27th, 2018. We'll be having a meeting, I think sometime maybe in November. We'll do a little update on where we stand on cleaning up old minutes. Maureen's been working hard on that, and I think we're getting close. Comments on the February 27th, 2018 minutes.
One comment is, it says that I was absent, but then I started making motions, so I suspected I was actually there.
Good catch. Anything else?
Other than that, I was good with them.
All right, seeing and hearing no other comments, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes of February 27, 2018.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of February 27th, 2018 as amended. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain
And you
since I wasn't there.
abstained because you weren't on the board.
That's why I did.
4 in favor, 1 abstention. Okay, thank you. Correspondence, did anybody see anything in the correspondence that we should put on a future agenda?
I've indicated one thing to the chair.
Thank you, appreciate that. And that, if you think of anything later, let me know. All right, let's get to the meat of our agenda, and that begins with the special one-day liquor license for the Kopczynski Sturgis Party at Emma's Cafe. Please approach the table and be heard.
Realized it was me.
All these people are expecting to be invited.
Oh, you bring something?
Yeah, what's my price?
So, birthday party?
Yeah, birthday party.
Hers?
Mine.
Yours?
One of those.
I'm glad she came because I wasn't going to rant around about what number it was. So if she wants to, she can.
I was only kidding, that is not a condition of the license.
Let's just say he throws me a party every 10 years.
Let's just say that if the number were disclosed, we would all say, oh, but don't look a day over X minus 10.
Thank you, Jim.
You want to say anything? It's at Emma's
Emma's?
birthday party.
Because it's going to be just a private, we're not selling liquor, we realized since it was at a private place, I was like, hey, we may need a license, and indeed we did, so.
And by the way, thanks for not doing it on town property, because that's
Yeah,
agenda
he knows
Number
that.
16, right,
and it's getting a little bit more complicated as time goes on. You have a tip certified server, not that we have any jurisdiction since it's on private property.
We're
Great.
actually both tip certified.
We're both tip
tip
certified,
certified.
as well as the folks at Emma's, so.
Terrific. Questions from members of the board? What is the actual day of the
September
birthday?
20th.
Of the birthday.
September 20th.
Well, happy birthday.
Any happy returns?
Thank you.
And no seeing and hearing, no questions.
Just happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Thanks, Don.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and sign a special one-day liquor license for Mike Kopczynski to host a private party at Emma's Cafe on Friday, September 20th, 2019, from 7 to 10 p.m.
Second?
And motion made and seconded to issue a one-day liquor license to Mike Kopczynski in honor of his wife Ellen Sturgis' birthday to host a party, a one-day liquor license at Emma's Cafe on, is it on the actual day,
Yes,
September
it is.
20th? On
Yep.
September 20th, 2019. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good time.
Thank you. Thanks.
So now we have a bunch of things involving the police department, which is probably why 80% of the room is here, I'm guessing.
After Triple E.
There's that. And the first thing on our agenda is to say goodbye to the well-dressed gentleman in the first row here. I have to say, former Chief Bill Bosworth. Mr. Bosworth, would you approach and have a seat?
Mr. Chairman.
I think he timed out. Good to see you.
Thank you.
You look great.
Thank you.
I noticed Rusty's in uniform. He looks like he's working.
Lucky him.
I have to say, I've seen you on some details.
Yes, you have.
Since, yeah.
Which is why it's fortuitous for us to appoint him to do that.
Yeah, it'd be very nice.
I'm glad you didn't get hit by a car or something, you would have been out of luck.
I'm shorthanded, I was just trying to help out.
How does it feel to have been retired for a week and a half or whatever it is?
It's been good so far.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's been good.
Who do you have with you tonight? Here tonight?
I have my lovely wife, Laura, and my son Derek, and my middle daughter Madison. Milligan. And my youngest daughter,
Time to retire.
Madison, is working. She's not there.
Now she's at school.
She's at school. And I have some brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws, and my sister Patricia and her husband, and there's a whole crew.
Well, I'm going to start off. We do have a certificate of appreciation, which I will read to you in a minute. But, I just wanted to say that, so I was at Don McPherson's house maybe a few weeks ago, and he was giving me the tour, and that used to be the home of the police chief. I guess it was back in the 50s and the 60s, I don't know. And, it gets you thinking about how far this department has come, and how I think each chief kind of takes it a step further. And you were chief for a while. You were chief since 2011?
Yes.
Yeah, so 8 solid years. And just speaking from my perspective, which is a couple of steps removed, so I probably don't know the whole story. But you seem to make progress in the department on a couple of fronts to me that I think were really important. Number one was in personnel. You have a good crew down there. And at this point, I don't know the exact percentages, but I would say you hired a lot of them or you promoted a lot of them at this point. From the outside looking in, it looks like they're all in jobs that they're perfect for, that they enjoy, and that they're good at. In your 8 years, we've had a few personnel issues. I'm not going to name any names. There have been some officers who have left because they had to leave. There's been some disciplinary stuff that kind of just runs across our desk. And I noticed kind of early on that in the way you deal with it, even though you've been with the department for 35 years, you don't tolerate and you don't like the way things used to be done. That's how it seemed to me. You recognize that there was a way of doing things back then, and there's a way of doing things now. And you were moving things toward the way they're done now. And that was really good.
Thank you.
You had a good touch on, again, from the outside looking in, and certain people may differ, I'm sure, you had a pretty good touch on discipline stuff. I remember one situation where a young officer did something foolish, not the biggest infraction in the world, but he did something foolish. And you found that sweet spot. You didn't come down on him real hard, but you didn't forget about it either. That might have been the old way of doing stuff. You really, as a former manager myself, I know how tough that is. And I was impressed by how you did that.
Thank you.
And then, that's all one thing. But then the second thing is that you were really good at outreach to the community and to groups that we need to keep this department running. I don't think a lot of people realize how a small police department, maybe even a big police department, depends on these nonprofits and these, I guess they're charities. When you have a domestic violence situation, what do you do with the victim? When you have a juvenile situation, you're going to need some help. You spent a lot of time doing outreach to those to those groups, going to their meetings, and I bet a lot of those meetings were painful, but you were patient with it, and you created some really good networks. I think the force takes advantage of almost every night, or at least a lot of nights every day. That is all very appreciative, and you should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you very much.
You're also a hell of a funny guy. Just had to mention that. Now, the official certificate, well, does anybody else have anything they want to add? Mr. Wrigley?
Well, it's been a great 8 years for me, and I hope for you, because in my 28 years here, I'll say this, the devotion to purpose that you've given to that job, the seriousness, the can-do attitude. As a veteran, these are things, good order and discipline, being consistent. You've made yourself a very good police chief and manager. Today, it's much more than police work that's involved, as you know. Personnel is mentioned and other things, budgeting and all the rest. But I will say this, that I'm proud that for the 8 years that we had together. You, as I said, devoted to that purpose of becoming as good as you could. And today, it's an uncommon characteristic today. You don't see it as much as you once did. Our culture's changed and everything else, but God bless the fact that you haven't. And the department, I'm hopeful, fully understands and appreciates some of the difficulties of being the manager, because I did. And you and I had to work very closely on a lot of important issues, and I was pleased and proud, professionally and personally, to have had you there. So,
Thank you very much.
your family should know that, and your friends as well.
And the other members of the board, Tom?
I've been working pretty close, on a number of issues over the years with Bill, and I found him to be very professional, incredibly responsive. Whenever I've had any questions, he gets right back to me, and I think he's been doing a superb job. Your act was hard to follow, but, Bill has been very, very good to work with, and he's got, he's acknowledged any number of times that he's also got a great staff behind him, and that's what helps make him good. So that's even, that's very important in my eyes too, recognizing that he's got a good group of people working with him. And I've enjoyed working with him very much. First, I hardly knew him when he was appointed, but he's grown on me over the years. And it's, I still remember his the party at, when he was sworn in. And hard to believe that it was 8 years ago now.
Pretty quick.
Bill, it has been a pleasure working with you, and hoping to work with you, keep you around for a while longer. Don't get hit by any cars.
I try not to. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Hux?
Not much left to be said, other than I personally have had some, close workings with you, not perhaps as many as these other gentlemen, but any time that I came to the department, I was welcomed in and listened to and given good advice, and that's all I could ask for. We don't work directly with the chief, and that's the way it should be, but I just want to appreciate that. And one other thing, I want to thank your family for making the very wise decision that you and your twin brother both didn't retire at the same time. Because one at a time's enough. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burke?
There's nothing left to add, but thank you very much for your time and service, and thanks for taking Jim Salvi on all those ride-alongs with us so well.
I only got one, but it was very instructive. Thanks, Brian. Anything you want to add?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience want to add anything? I do want to thank your family for sharing the chief with us. He was obviously a very big part of this town for a very long time. We haven't even commented on your long service before you were chief, but we deeply appreciate everything you're giving this town.
Thank you.
And as a small token of this town's everlasting appreciation, we'll be issuing you a certificate that
Suitable for framing.
suitable framing that reads as follows. On this 10th day of September 2019, the Stow Board of Selectmen hereby expresses its sincere appreciation to retiring Police Chief William Bosworth for his 35 years of dedicated service in the Town of Stow Police Department. Chief Bosworth began his career with the Stow Police Department on July 1, 1984, starting as a patrolman. Though he intended to stay only a year or two, Stow apparently grew on him. He has remained in Stow for the entirety of his 35-year career. Promoted to sergeant in the late 1980s, he was named interim chief in 2011 before being appointed as permanent chief several months later. During his tenure, Chief Bosworth updated many policies and procedures, formed numerous partnerships, and implemented upgrades in equipment, particularly in technology, with the updating of radios and computers and inclusion of taser training. I should have mentioned that because my capital planning, I remember you coming in and arguing for all that stuff. EpiPen, Narcan, and defibrillator training was also added. An internet exchange safety zone was established and a drug take-back box was installed. On behalf of the entire town, the Board of Selectmen wishes Chief Bosworth an enjoyable retirement filled with good health, travel, enjoyment of family, and the chance to work on his golf game.
Needs a lot of work.
I will take a motion to issue a certificate in the form just read.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept to adopt the proclamation as just read.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to issue a certificate of appreciation to retiring Police Chief William Bosworth in the form as read. Further discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And that is unanimous, Chief. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if I could just
Please.
have a couple of minutes?
Yes, of course.
I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank my police officers, the police department, highway, fire department, my partners in public safety over the last 8 years. You guys have been fantastic. I want to thank every town department. We have a bunch of small departments, but a bunch of great employees. They've all been fantastic the last 35 years, particularly the last 8 years. They've been fantastic. I want to wish all the police officers the best in the future. It's hard being a police officer this day and age. You have to wear a million hats, and I want you all to be careful and give your best in adverse conditions. We've got a great department here. We've got a great bunch of guys and girls. I'm proud of all of you, and I'm sure you'll be great in the future. I want to thank our police partners, Domestic Violence Services Network, Restorative Justice, Central Middlesex Police Partnership, the Middlesex Sheriff's Department, the Middlesex District Attorney's Office, which has been fabulous the last 8 years. They've supplied us with Narcan for all our cruises, the Massachusetts State Police, the Environmental Police. All these agencies, every time we call them, they come out. Every surrounding police department in this area is fairly small. I want to thank every one of my colleagues and every one of the police departments. Every time we call them, they come and help us. Whether it's Bolton or Hudson or Sudbury, Maynard, Acton, Boxborough, Berlin, Littleton. Anytime we call these departments, they come out and help us, and we help them too. It just shows you the can-do attitude that Mr. Wrigley talks about. I want to thank everyone for making this a very successful run the last 8 years. I want to thank the selectmen for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Wrigley, it was an opportunity of a lifetime. I cherished it, I enjoyed it, but it was exhausting. I'm ready to go. It's been 35 years, the last 8 years as chief, and if you think over 35 years, been married, I had 3 wonderful children. I lost 2 parents, I lost my mother-in-law, father-in-law, 2 brother-in-laws, had 14 nieces and nephews. So I've got a great group of people around me, brothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws. Rich Ronstock, retired from the Barica Police. Joe Brooks, currently on the Waltham Police. These guys have been by my side for years, and we kind of all leaned on each other when we needed to. Joe B., I can't tell you his last name because it's about this long, from the Barica Fire Department, Yancey. All these guys have been fabulous. My co-workers, Gary Murphy, retired, he's here tonight. Everyone's been fantastic. I want to especially thank my wife Laura, my children, 2 of which are here tonight, Derek and Morgan. Madison's at school, not work. And it's tough being a family of a police officer. There's a lot of hours. You're tired, you're exhausted, you're stressed out, constant scrutiny, and you have to hustle to make a buck. And it's been a long 35 years, and I thank you all for putting up with me the last 35 years. In conclusion, I just want to thank the board again, Mr. Wrigley. In particular, you were fantastic to work with. In the sports comparison, I compare you to Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. People may not necessarily love you, but they'll run through a cement wall for you. And I was one of those people because I gave 110% because I was afraid to disappoint you. And you know what? You were fantastic to work for. You're a great guy. And the town's in the shape it is because of the board and mainly because of you. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you for everything. And as they do at Foxwoods, I'm out. Good luck to you. replaced by a great guy. I've worked with Lieutenant Marino for 30-plus years. He's fantastic. He's going to do a great job. And the best thing for you, you only have to do it for 3 years. Then it has to go. On that, I'll shut up because I know you guys are on the clock, and thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
So Chief, let me present this to you, but I want to see, does anybody want a picture? And Bill, do you want to?
Usually some family people want to get pictures over there.
I'll stand away.
Dan,
Against the wall.
you usually want a picture?
Chief, you gotta hang around for your special.
Oh, that's right.
That's why we're a great board.
Yes, yes.
If I knew how much they liked me, I would have stayed a few more years.
We kept that a close guard secret.
I would ask for more money.
That's exactly what I
I've asked for enough.
Yeah, that didn't seem to slow you down. This is yours. So,
And one other thing, you
I didn't know he talked so much. Okay, go ahead.
I said you knew him.
Yeah,
so stay.
yeah, so we got appointed as a special.
Yes, we have a few more things
I
related to
skipped
the
it.
police.
Why don't we just?
I would do that so that he can,
Okay, I want to hear for Rusty's thing, though.
oh, yes.
I'm here for 3 years.
I want to have you here for the appointment of Rusty, and then we'll do the special. Is that okay?
You're just making sure I stay.
Yeah.
I've been known to walk out and meet.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. I was on complete streets with you. You just get up and leave.
Haven't seen him in months.
Having gotten rid of one chief, we kind of need another. Rusty, you want to join us?
Welcome to the hottest seat.
Rusty, how are you?
And I've already got your phone number. Yeah, I know you
Rusty, this is your first, I guess, official introduction to the town in this new capacity. Why don't you tell the town something about your background, how long you've been with the force? You were appointed lieutenant, what, 5 years ago?
5 years ago, 2014. I stepped foot in this town in March 28, 1988. I've been here ever since. Previous to that, I was a police officer in the city of Richmond, Virginia for almost 7 years. Originally from Massachusetts, my wife, my son's standing over there, Kevin. Moved back here in 88, got appointed here in 88, we've been doing this ever since. Promoted in 2014, and God willing, the creek don't rise, I'll be here until I retire, just like the gentleman over there. So, just happy to be on board. Looking forward for the next 3 years and take it from there.
Terrific. It's good to promote from within, and you've been in the lieutenant slot good 5 years, and you're the guy we want at the helm. So
I appreciate that.
thank you for stepping up, and I will take a motion or additional comments.
I was just gonna say that, I've had a number of conversations with Rusty over the years, and I found him very professional, and I think he's gonna do a great job for us, and he's also comes highly recommended by Chief Bosworth. So it's, but, any of the times that I have called, Rusty on business, he's been very responsive, so I expect that will continue, and we'll have a good run with him also.
Great.
Just,
Mr. Burke?
I'm sorry.
Just in the spirit of full disclosure that has swept through the board recently, I need to note for the public record that Lieutenant Marino and I were high school classmates together.
That's true. So much younger.
That doesn't disqualify.
Ryan stayed back a couple.
Yes, I was at the
It's not a lady state.
but
I'm not making any comment.
Lieutenant Marino was one of the students who didn't bully me.
So he has stories about you?
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Oh, all right. We'll save that for another meeting. Any further comments or a motion?
I just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Town Administrator.
just like to
Oh, Mr.
add,
Thomas.
you've obviously got big shoes to fill, but you've had 5 years to shape them and so that they won't be hard on your feet as you slip into them. And I'm sure,
Well, there's a tough act to follow, I will say that.
yes, but you've had an excellent teacher, and we look forward to working with you.
Same. Thank you.
Bill?
I just want to mention that the purpose of creating the lieutenant's position in Lebanon was for this very outcome here, which is we walk the talk when it comes to promotion from within. We believe it. And if we've got the right people, especially in a small organization, there's not great opportunity for development or advancement. And the only way you can keep good police officers, and given the years of credit that our police departments had through the years staying here this long, they got to feel good about our side of the table and the community they serve and the culture that is here. And there is a different culture in Stow than everywhere else. I believe that firmly, which is why I'm here. And in part, this promotion is a reflection of that. And we're going to promote from within to fill this spot. We'll talk about filling the lieutenant spot after we get through this in a few weeks. But I think it's important for all those employees in the department to know that if you do well, work hard, discipline the rest of it, and give the effort to it and a devotion to a very important service, what few slots we have, we will fill from within without going out the door. And again, that's not as common as it once was, but it's our practice here, and it's not just in police department, but all of our departments. We believe in attempting to give what promotions we have to those who have devoted to work for us. And so it's a systemic thing for me, and so this is only part of a process that will continue, I hope, for all of those that serve in the department.
Thank you for bringing your family here on this important night. Any comments from the assembled masses? All right. Is there I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Gordon?
I move to appoint Lieutenant Ralph Marino as police chief for the town of Stow.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Lieutenant Ralph Marino as police chief for the town of Stow. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Congratulations, Rusty. So, is there a badge, the gold badge? There you go. So I was wondering if we want another picture. I was thinking, Bill, maybe you want to pin it on? Or his wife? Yes, much more appropriate, yes. I'm sorry, what's your name?
My wife's
Linda.
Hi, Linda, I'm Jim. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
So this is the official picture area over here.
If you stand a little to the side,
Yes.
then you won't get the clock in the picture.
Or Linda can do that.
And then I have your oath to swear you in while we have a crowd here.
Got it, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Well, slow down. You gotta- Slow down.
Don't stick them.
I still have the best.
Don't give her ideas.
Go ahead.
So when I interview you, Rusty, for the paper, this way I don't have to take a picture.
Oh, thank you.
I'm doing you a favor.
Linda, do you want to administer the oath right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Because we have a crowd and
it's
certainly
fun.
official.
Got it.
You're going to repeat after me.
I will.
You will. I'm going to say I, and then you're going to state your name. And I'll give you other clues because you're going to say it twice.
He doesn't need any clues.
Come on. All right. I
Ralph Marino,
promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws of the Commonwealth of
the
Massachusetts,
town charter,
the town charter,
the bylaws of the town of Stow.
the bylaws of the town of Stow.
I promise to impart to my profession
I promise to impart to my profession
standards of quality and integrity,
standards of quality and integrity,
so that the conduct of the affairs of my office
so that the conduct of the affairs of my office
shall be above reproach
shall be above reproach,
and merit public confidence in the position of Chief of Police.
and merit confidence, one more time,
And merit public confidence
and merit public confidence
in the position of Chief of Police.
in the position of Chief of Police.
I promise to uphold such laws and bylaws
I promise to uphold such laws and bylaws
to which the office of Chief of Police may be subject.
to which the office of the Chief of Police may be subject.
I
Ralph Marino,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
I will perform the duties incumbent upon me as Chief of Police of the Town of Stow
perform the duties as incumbent upon me of the Chief of Police of the Town of Stow
in good faith
in good faith,
and to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
You can
Well,
keep going, and I just
thank
have
you.
him sign his.
Well, you know it's an important office when the oath of office is twice as long as the one for President of the United States.
And I didn't need to repeat it. There you go.
Thank you. And now we can appoint former Chief Bosworth as a special, and I take it that doesn't...
Assuming Rusty wants them.
Assuming, yeah.
Now that he's got the job,
Now, Chief, I'm sure you can find stuff before you
You got the
do.
badge now, you still gonna recommend him?
I have to.
You sure you want this? I know it's only for 1 year.
All you guys do is 1 year.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint William Bosworth as Special Police Officer for the Town of Stow, effective as of August 28th, 2019, and until June 30th, 2020, subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint William Bosworth as a Special Police Officer for the Town of Stow, effective August 28th, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous. Former Chief Officer Bosworth, thank you very much.
Promoted, demoted.
Pleasure.
Yeah, does
It's a
he
pleasure to
get
have you on
to
the board.
keep his now, or?
Because he was at a demotion.
You should get paid more for that. So, thank you, and thank you to all the members of the family for turning out for this. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you for loaning them.
We have a few more police-related items on our agenda, and I'm going to get these right. So first is the appointment of a police prosecutor, Sean Collins. Is Officer Collins with us?
There he is.
How are you? You know, I just want to see if you're here, so.
See if
You
you
want
want
to be police
interested.
prosecutor?
Sure, why not?
Great. Just-
Already there.
Just need to check. Don't want to appoint somebody to something and say, what? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Sean Collins as Police Prosecutor for the Town of Stow Police Department.
Second.
And motion made and seconded to appoint Sean Collins as police prosecutor for the Town of Stow Police Department. Further discussion? Last chance. We haven't voted yet.
I take it you want him as prosecutor?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Good.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And you're in. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
You do the same.
finally, I think we have the appointment of a part-time dispatcher, Shawn Marques. I hope I say that right. Is Shawn here? No. Okay. So it doesn't matter if I mangle his or her name. So do I have a motion for the appointment of Shawn Marques as part-time dispatcher?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Shawn Marques as a part-time dispatcher for the Town of Stow effective immediately and until June 30th, 2020, subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Shawn Marques as part-time police dispatcher until June 30th, 2020. Further discussion?
Reading through the information, it sounded like he's a good fit, and I assume the new chief is also in favor of that.
Yes. He's currently
Very good.
full-time.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is a done deal, Shawn Marques part-time. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up and attending. Appreciate
We
it.
got some work.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Not tonight.
All right, I have next on my agenda a couple of, that was nice. Couple of lower village entry agreements. Jesse's not joining us for this?
He's coming, I texted
Oh,
him
okay.
a few minutes ago, so we could do the certificate.
So, he's here for the next two items. Yes, I could do just the Eagle Project thing, so let's do that. Let's go directly to the Eagle Project item. Are you here for the Eagle Project thing as well? No?
I stayed
For the police stuff?
for the police.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
Thank you for your
Thank
public
you.
input. We never had public input like that in 3 or 4 years.
I don't know if that's a good comment. I'll take it as a good comment.
Ma'am, it was definitely good. You presented your concerns very professionally, politely. We had a little discussion. It was terrific. You did a great job.
Yeah, that's my intent. You
Yeah.
guys do a lot of work, and I don't want to...
Well, he does a lot of work. We don't do it.
Angry bull.
No.
I just need more information. I think the community needed more information, and I really appreciate, I don't know who's running the site, but the site's doing a great job of sending out information on Triple E. Perfect stuff.
Terrific. Thank you. Hope to see you again.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, I'm on the, and I hope everyone else is on the Eagle Scout project for Quinn Gross, which I understand is a kiosk at Captain Sergeant Conservation Land. Do I have a motion?
Was he invited tonight?
I don't know.
You do have a motion.
There are things in our materials.
No, I know, but sometimes they like to show up and get
So
a
they-
picture.
If I might, I believe this is recognition for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout that he previously completed his project.
I believe he completed the project, and he has a court of honor coming up on the 21st.
Yep.
So we really have two questions. We want to do the official citation, and then we want to make sure somebody's going, and I must say, Mr. Burke is generally the person who goes, having a son in Boy Scouts, or used to be in Boy Scouts, I don't know. Can you make this one?
I can, but I don't want to monopolize it if Mr. Hawks wants to go. All right, well, I will attend, and just please give me the certificate after you all sign it.
Yep.
My son has moved away to college. He's no longer an active Boy Scout in Stow Trip 1.
But I understand you're still participating as an active parent. I get reports. I get reports. I got my people.
It's like a Marine, once a Boy Scout, always a Boy Scout?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's a Boy Scout parent? Well,
Okay, do I have a motion on this certificate?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recognize Boy Scout Quinn Gross for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout and to sign the letter and proclamation for his recognition ceremony on Saturday, September 21st, 2019.
Second.
And for the record, the citation says, "Be it known that the Stow Board of Selectmen hereby extends its warmest congratulations to Quinn Gross in recognition of his induction into the Eagle Court of Honor on September 21st, 2019. And be it further known that the Stow Selectmen extend their best wishes for his future success." And it's signed by all of us. So a motion is made and seconded to issue a letter and certificate in the form just read. Further discussion? Yes,
Just,
please.
it's amazing to me. I'm coming up on, I guess, 7 years or 7.5 years or something like that on this board, and I couldn't begin to count the number of Eagle Scouts that we have honored in this way. And it's just a tremendous reflection on the adult leadership as well as the just the intent and effort put in by these young men. And I think we count ourselves very fortunate. I remember at one time when JP was here and asking him about it, you know, and I think we probably per capita have one of the highest memberships of Eagle Scouts vis-a-vis total memberships of any troop in the state. It's just amazing, and we should pass along our gratitude every time we see those troop leaders and everybody else. That a lot goes on behind the scenes, but good work.
That's especially true given the fact that the culture is changing so much,
Yes.
so as it relates to things like scouting and religion and other things, the practice is falling everywhere. And so Stow stands out as a community that continues to be able to foster that interest from young kids.
Mr. Burke?
For what it's worth, I know him. Quinn is a nice young man.
And picking up on Mr. Hawks's point, I think it's a lot of work, from what I understand, being one of the troop leaders. I have a friend who regularly is doing one of those winter campouts in the town forest in the dead of January. Oh, you couldn't pay me enough to do that. So, anyway, so a motion made and seconded to issue the letter and citation in the form so read for Quinn Gross. And being no further discussion, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Thank you. And we've been joined by Mr. Do you have something to say?
Do we have the,
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
signature
Yeah.
for we escape?
We've been joined by the town planner, Mr. Steadman. Jesse, we got two things on the agenda involving you. One is the rights of entry, I guess they're called, for two parcels owned by Fischer and Mark. I never know how to say his last name.
Forgues.
Forgues.
Yep.
I think my biggest question, why the different form? Why a right of entry and not the easement that we've seen with others? Is there any reason for that?
Yeah, so the right of entry, we're not asking for any permanent easements here. This isn't an interest in land in any way. This is just kind of a standard format agreement, which basically says, for the purpose of the work that's being proposed and for the timeframes outlined in the agreement, will allow you to be on our property to do that work. It's really that simple. So it's not like somebody is allowing some permanent ability for the public to pass and repass. We didn't need that at these two properties. What we just needed to make sure is that we could match their driveways to the new grades, which means we have to go in about 15 or so feet. We needed to pull out a fence and then replace it back on their property. We needed to install some area drains that require them to kind of be positioned on their property. So just various things that we just need their permission to be able to get out there and do the work.
I thought the construction easements were temporary. They're just for as long as the construction lasted.
So this is something that I've learned lately, is that you can go the construction temporary easement route, which is a little more formalized, which is why we accepted those easements previously at town meeting in case people wanted to go that route. The right of entry agreement is just a little simpler, and it's not that interest in land, and some people have said they'd rather do that.
Okay.
Town council has helped provide both for whatever people wanted to do. So,
Okay, so they have largely the same effect, but it depends to some extent on what the landowner wants to do.
Yep. I mean, I prefer this because it avoids having to put it on the warrant and go through all that, because you're really getting the same effect, which is the ability to get out there and do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Further questions? Town council's reviewed both of them.
Yep, they've seen all of these.
Okay. If there are no questions, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign easement agreement extensions for two Lower Village properties. 1 White Pond Road, map number R29, parcel 82, owned by Kathleen Fischer. 9 White Pond Road, map number R29, parcel 80, owned by Mark D. Forgues.
Second.
Presented by the planning board.
Second.
I'm confused, Mr. Chair, and this goes to the motion, so it's, I guess, a point of information. Are these easements or right of entries? Or are they the amount of the same thing?
I'm concerned that the motion does not match up with the document.
Yeah, I think the difference is significant enough that
Yeah, I do
it
too.
would be amended to be a right of entry.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend my motion.
actually, Courtney, why don't you withdraw it?
Absolutely.
And
Done.
I assume that the second is withdrawn. And why don't you just make the same motion, but instead of easement agreement extensions, say rights of entry without prejudice.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign rights of entry without prejudice for two Lower Village properties. 1 White Pond Road, map number R29, parcel 82, owned by Kathleen Fischer. Number 9 White Pond Road, map number R29, parcel 80, owned by Mark D. Forgues, as
Second.
presented by the planning board.
Second. That was consistent.
Motion made and seconded to approve two rights of entry without prejudice for the two specified parcels on White Pond Road, in Lower Village. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing, was that your hand? No. Seeing, hearing, none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's approved unanimously. Thank you. And then the intermunicipal agreement. So this is the services where basically they keep track of the SHI for us, right? How we're doing on the SHI, is that right?
Yeah, they actually go out and contact all the owners or in some cases renters of units that are on the SHI, so they do a fair amount of administrative work in that regard. Basically, we have some of our, what we call monitoring hours with them, they do that kind of work. We also have some local support hours where we can, if something comes up on a housing need, like assessing an application for a middle-income restricted unit, we can send it to them and have them help us kind of make sure all of the financial documents and everything check out. So.
Mr. Chairman, question?
I have one question, I'll get you in a second. Is the term correct that it begins on January 1, 2018? Did we forget to enter into one, or?
Whereabouts are you looking on this document?
Paragraph 1, actually.
So I have commencing this day of blank 2019 as follows.
Okay, that's not the copy I have.
Okay, I think, did it say January 2018?
It said January 1, 2018 to 2021. Oh, well, you're looking at the very first paragraph.
Yep.
I'm talking about at the bottom of that page,
Oh, okay.
the numbered paragraph 1 term, the second line, will commence on January 1, 2018.
Good catch.
3 years from the date for So that was the day that this intermunicipal agreement was originally put forward. So we're not here necessarily to extend it. What we're hoping to do was to amend it so that we could include Harvard as one of the communities in the agreement. So we will come back for an extension at a later time. That is how I've been understanding this. So commence on January 1st, 2018, expire 3 years unless sooner amended. Let's see.
So you're saying that you think we have an existing agreement that began January 1, 2018,
We do, that's correct. Yep.
and that this one's being amended just to add the town of Harvard as a participant?
That was all we had entertained at this time. We didn't know, there was never any discussion of kind of going back to dates or trying to renew it.
So it was sort of presented to us as, the renewal, especially because, as you pointed out, at the beginning, it says commencing this date, this blank day of blank 2019. So I think the terms are a little off.
So all right, so in that regard,
I don't think
let me make sure that this is
Yeah.
correct with the rest of the communities and that they're not running into a similar issue, so.
Why don't we just table this until the next meeting? You can give us maybe a red line copy,
That's fair, okay.
but I will add, but Mr. Hawks has a question that may have more substance.
Well, for the viewing audience and those of us who might have returned from the Great North Woods recently and still have pine needles in our ears, could you explain what SHI refers to?
Yeah, the SHI is the Department of Housing and Community Development's subsidized housing inventory. If you hear folks in the kind of affordable housing context talk about our percentage of affordable housing, that SHI is the index that they're referring to.
And how does that relate to the town, for the camera?
Yep.
What is this about? Harvard is joining us in what?
Harvard, like a lot of towns, also has to manage all of these different affordable units that count towards that 10% or that SHI number, and they are also looking for this group that provides these regional services to help them monitor those units on a year-to-year basis, take track and stock of foreclosures, deal with some of the legal stuff that comes with that, and help make sense of it all.
And that is what is being done for us as a member of
Yep.
this.
And they want to start paying in and get some.
Thank you very much.
Do you remember a few years ago, there were a couple of units, I think, in the development on 117, where it was either due to foreclosure or the way that the easements were written, they were going to expire, and we had to take action before they expired. I think this organization helped identify those restrictions that were going to expire. They help you they help you make sure the things you think are on the subsidized housing index are still on the subsidized housing index. Somebody hasn't sold it for too much money, broken the restrictions are still in effect, that kind of thing.
All that kind of stuff.
Because that's time consuming if you had to do it on your own. Tom?
Maybe my legal colleagues have a different view, but I would think something like this, where there's already an agreement, it would be better handled by an amendment, 1 or 2 page document that says what is changing about this, rather than, to avoid changing the term and other things like that. So you may just want to mention that to the folks in Hudson, rather than rewriting it, where then all of a sudden it's taking effect, but then it's referring to years prior, which is, they just do it as, we're adding Harvard under these terms, and this is, other than that, the original agreement stands with the intent of adding Harvard.
Got it.
And then it would have been clearer, I think, to all of us, and it doesn't change the original agreement.
So, and I'm sorry, I just noticed those things today.
Yeah, me
Or else I
too.
would've-
No,
I would've-
yeah, it's not a huge thing. I will go back to them, we'll get it sorted out. and
Okay.
I'll talk with Maureen and see when we can come back again.
All right, very good, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. So I think next we're doing the 2019 Ride to Defeat ALS. We have approved this before, we have a public safety plan, and it looks like this ride, which is to be held on September 22nd, basically comes into town on Eldridge Street, goes down Taylor, goes down Boxborough, and goes out South Acton Road, very common route. So it's only in our town for about, 8 miles, maybe, tops. Okay, anybody have any questions or motion? Hello, Ms. Tricia?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with the approval of public safety officials, I move to approve the use of town public ways for the 2019 Ride to Defeat ALS bike ride on Sunday, September 22nd, 2019. This
Second.
event is familiar to Stow public safety officials, and their approval has been given. The ride will follow the same route as last year, and a certificate of insurance has been received. The office will issue a permit letter if the event is approved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to issue a permit for the 2019 Ride to Defeat ALS on Sunday, September 22nd. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's approved. Okay, the next item puzzled me a little bit, but I guess I understand it. So we need to make, pursuant to state law, we need to make a finding for bond counsel that the maximum useful life of the fire department pumper truck that we just bonded for a town meeting is 15 to 20 years. Obviously, the idea being that the item being purchased should have a useful life of at least as long as the bond terms, or as the bond term. Is that about it?
In this case, it's also about the fact that we're bundling all three together, meaning to say that the HVAC replacement work is ongoing now. By the way, this crew working, you'll notice that the suspended ceilings are down and all the rest of it, but they've already pulled the boiler out in the basement. They're working through each floor. They put in air conditioners. Given that we're still fully open and working, and
Yeah.
people's walking on ladders and stuff, I keep my fingers crossed, but in any event, it's going smoothly today. So that with the fire truck, together with the lower village, because they want to borrow for the same term for one borrowing, we had to sync them up, and the bond counsel requires an affirmation, because it's rolling stock, that it has a effective life of at least as long as the other two, which are infrastructure projects, and you can go up to 30 years with. And so the chief, I had asked the chiefs to submit to your office affirmation that it is at least 15 years for that new truck.
I certainly hope it'll last longer than that.
Yeah, and so when it gets relegated to the second team for backup, but we've got equipment, rolling stock that in the highway and fire trucks that go well beyond that. But the statute requires that after bond council. And you're the chief elected officials, you signed to the bond, so there's only one group that can do that.
Does everybody feel comfortable with this? That you understand it and that they feel capable of doing it?
Well,
Okay.
the bond council's just trying to make sure we're not borrowing for 30 years for something that's only gonna last 20, or
Right.
borrowing for 20 that's only gonna last 10.
And you didn't sneak something in with the other two that are, by definition, in plain view for being affirmed for 20 or greater, right? And rolling stock would be the piece that you have to affirm, that you expect.
Mr. Burke?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm very familiar, I think I'm familiar now with the purpose for this vote, but I just want to be sure that the fire chief has said that it is useful for 15 or 20 years. We're not just voting on this in a vacuum.
No,
So-
he submitted, I had him submit in writing to your office.
I didn't see
You
it.
haven't seen it.
Okay, well, I saw a copy of what he submitted to your
I'm-
office, that's all.
No,
I'm prepared to accept that representation.
Yeah, I discussed that with, I had the same question I discussed with town administrator beforehand. My understanding is that there is an email where the fire chief, that we can rely on, where the fire chief says it has a useful life of 15 to 20 years. As Mr. Burke said, I'll accept the town administrator's representation if that exists. The motion should reflect that we're relying on the fire chief's representation of that.
Well, we've also got past history that, you know,
We-
we're replacing a fire truck that I think is over 20 years old.
Oh, yeah. We sometimes make them last a lot longer than that. So, do I have a motion?
You do, but I'll just add that since my name is going to be on this certificate, that I'm glad that you've all asked all these questions, and I would love it if the motion were to reflect that it was certified by the,
Well, I think
Fire
you
department.
should have a introductory on the representation of the fire chief, that the life of the capital asset is between 15 and 20 years, comma.
works for me.
Yes,
So-
and Maureen, you could find his email that came and just distribute it to him tomorrow or something, so that no one
Yes.
loses too much sleep over it.
We don't want you to go to jail, Courtney. Not on this.
Brian's agreed to serve your term.
Not over this.
They don't, the law doesn't care which of you goes to jail, as long as one of you
Something
goes.
more important, maybe.
He's volunteered to represent you, pro bono.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
It'd be a vacation.
on the recommendation of the fire chief, that
The life of the capital asset
the life of the capital asset, thank you,
is between 15 and 20 years.
is between 15 and 20 years, I move that the selectmen vote to certify that the maximum useful life of the fire department pumper truck is 15 to 20 years.
Second.
Motion made and seconded on the recommendation and basis of the fire chief's statement to find that the maximum useful life of the fire department pumper truck is 15 to 20 years. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. Okay.
The clerk signs that rather than the board, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, Mr. Town Administrator, I'm sorry. I think I want you here for the discussion on the alcohol.
I knew you would say that.
Yeah, you could be useful on that. I'm also glad the town clerk is here. And always glad you're here, Ann, but I don't mean to exclude you. So you have in your material, so just to refresh everybody's memory, in, wow, I want to say July, maybe June, we had a preliminary discussion, and I thought it was a very good discussion, about the use of alcohol on town property. We have an opinion from town council, which Maureen gave you another copy of, from January of this year, where, you know, town council basically says, don't have alcohol on town property. We had a good preliminary discussion, whenever it was in June. We haven't all been together since then, and I was tasked with taking a stab at writing something up based on what I'd seen from other towns. I did that in the draft. It's like a page and a half, and it's headed alcohol on town property. To tell you the truth, I don't really expect a vote in favor of this tonight. I just expect it to kick off a discussion. If you're thrilled with it, then sure, let's vote it, but it is sort of a stab in the dark. I will state for the record again I'm fine with what town council recommends, no alcohol on town property, period, that's the end of it. I understand feelings to the contrary, so if we're inclined to try to get maximum wiggle room on that, some neighboring towns, town of Sudbury has no alcohol on town property, but some of our neighboring towns, Bolton, Boxborough, Harvard, they have more flexible policies. What I've drafted here is kind of an amalgamation of what I found there, and it's really pretty simple. In terms of the town itself or town departments, I picked up on a statement that frankly the town clerk made at our last discussion, which is just, I don't see any excuse for the town or town departments to have alcohol at any of their events, period. I make one narrow exception for what we call ceremonial events. I picked that up from, I believe it was Boxborough and Harvard, where informally they allow what they call champagne toasts. Somebody's retiring, everybody gets one glass of champagne, and that's why I drafted the way I did. I define that as there's a limited amount of alcohol, no more than one drink per attendee. Beyond that, in this draft, Friends organizations are not considered to be town departments, so they can have alcohol. The rules for Friends organizations or any other private entity would be dependent on size and whether or not it's a closed event, and you see the definitions here. For a private event, the draft has more flexible requirements, basically just indemnification. Private event is something where you don't expect more than 20 attendees, or, it's a closed guest list, and you don't anticipate more than 20 people, so a small thing. Obviously, 20 is just pulled out of the air. For a public event, that's the whole hog, and this is consistent with what our neighbors do. You have to have a tip certified server, and you gotta have insurance in the amounts that I listed here. And public event is anything where the public may attend or where you reasonably anticipate 20 or more attendees. The other thing that I did here, and I'm picking up on town council, serving includes giving out alcohol for free or people bringing alcohol and having it on a table, because as town council points out, you could reasonably be considered to be in control of the event enough to govern the distribution of alcohol. And I will say, I definitely think that was true for the fire department event last year. So that's it. That's just meant to kick off a discussion. Tom, I particularly wanted to wait until you were here. You seem to have some strong feelings about it.
Well, one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I had great plans while I was on vacation, shall we say, try to write some stuff up. But one of the things, I think we almost need a purpose statement for this policy, right? What are we trying to accomplish with this, right? And one of the main things that we're trying to accomplish, obviously, is to limit the town's liability. But I also think we want to, and I put it down that, we want to protect the town of Stow from unwarranted liability in the serving. I'm not sure if I like the word the way you've defined it, but I'm using that right now, of alcohol on town-owned property while allowing appropriate private and public consumption of alcohol for community events.
That's too squishy for me.
Well, this was just my first stab at it. My first thought was, trying to protect the town without sucking the fun out of everything in life. But I don't think that's quite
Glad you didn't use those terms. That would have killed the discussion, I'm thinking.
Right. Well, but that's it. I think it's our job to try to protect the town, but I think it's also, I've talked to any number of people that have suggested to me that, for a wine and cheese thing, right? Or wine when they're having an art show. They had a dance where they were selling alcohol for Springfest this year. One of the things that I think would help me, I've been one of the critics of us issuing non-sale liquor licenses for the last few years. But now I'm thinking that we probably made a wise choice, especially with this coming up, because I think it would be helpful to me, and I don't know if Maureen has the ability to pull them all together to see what we've been seeing over the years.
No, she does not have that time. We are still, I understand the idea, but I don't think we should have Maureen do that. Maureen, I get a lot of messages from Maureen about how slammed they are, and I don't think that they
Okay.
need another research project.
No, in that case, is there a single file that you put all the liquor licenses that we do in?
By year, so you'd have to.
That's okay, if I just, so if I came into the office sometime and got a copy of them, so that I could see what we've been doing.
But what are you trying to accomplish?
I realize that things have changed from a few years ago, but I don't want to drive the fire department out of town to have a party.
I do.
I don't want to drive,
I was appalled by their event last year.
I thought it was a great thing.
We had vomit in the bathrooms afterwards.
I have another conversation with Chief Landry.
And I am not, that was the potential for liability. It was a great event while I was there, absolutely, but that was a shot across the bow, as far as I'm concerned. This town, we incur potential for liability every day just providing municipal services. You have to, like every business, like every town, just doing your job these days entails a certain amount of risk of liability. To incur completely unnecessary risk and serious risk, people sue each other all the time over this kind of stuff, is irresponsible. And I'm just telling you what my position is. I barely agree with the thing I wrote. I'm with town council, just ban it, and the town will not be poorer for it, and will be safer. Mr. Hawes.
We pay good money for good representation in legal matters. And when I read such unequivocal language from our esteemed town council as, for this reason, we cannot recommend any, emphasis added, policy other than prohibiting the consumption of alcohol at town-sponsored events on town property, period. That is pretty definitive to me. And no matter how this might be worded, I'm sorry if it seems like, the skunk at the garden party, whatever.
That's how I feel.
I'm gonna vote no against it. And especially just as, because I'm not bringing this up out of thin air. Footnote in that same line, the next line, BYOB policy. Read the footnote. We also note that with adult consumption of marijuana now lawful, a guest might lawfully bring edible marijuana products to such event. And that should be addressed in another memorandum. I think this is certainly, if such a policy as you drafted were adopted by this board, we would then be facing the thorny issue sometime down the road when somebody comes in and says, I want to have marijuana at the next event. I don't think we should be involved in any of it. I commend Kopczynski's for going to Emma's, and there's another place that's going to be opening soon down at the cafe down here, which may be a suitable place for such. I just do not agree with this policy at all, and I intend to vote no in whatever form might be brought back.
Mr. Burke, I'm coming to you next, get ready.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, please.
No,
I apologize.
Give her time to think, go ahead, you.
I apologize if I
No, she didn't raise her hand. I'm just giving her fair warning.
Thank you. First off, I'm not as persuaded by our town council's opinion letter. I give it due deference, and it is, it's just been my experience that attorneys get paid to say no. Having said that, I understand the feelings of, I think, a majority of the board. And if it's going to be the determination that alcohol not be served by town departments or town boards on town property, that's just the way of the future. Just seems the way things have changed. If that is the case, then I would recommend, and I want to commend the chair and not only his hard work in trying to put this to us, but also his spirit of compromise and trying to make allowances for certain kinds of events that have been traditionally held in this town. But having said that, if we're going to go into the future, we don't need ceremonial events. I've never been to one, and maybe I'm not invited to a lot, but I've never been to one, just like high school. But I haven't been invited to one where anybody has done a champagne drink. We're not Harvard, we're not Bosworth, we're not fancy like that. If we were, most of the selectmen wouldn't be on this board.
And I have been, because I've worked in the public sector for 20 years, we've had plenty of champagne toasts on public property, and everybody gets, well, it may not be champagne, it's that non-alcoholic wine.
That's fine.
And it's an easy,
Yeah.
You have the right to disagree with town council's opinion. I'll just say this, I looked into the same stuff when I was general counsel to a state agency, and the state agency unfortunately initially had a very liberal position on liquor. I think he's understating it. I was horrified by some of the cases I saw. And
I didn't intend to raise that as an argument, I just...
No, I know what you're saying, but
Yeah,
it's
and
one of those things where I almost think he's not going far enough.
Perhaps. But I'm just going beyond that. If the will of this board, and it's this board, and the policy can be changed at some point in the future, but if the will of this board is that there'll be no alcohol on town property, and by town departments, all right, I'll get behind that, but I don't see the need for a ceremonial event exclusion or exception. Secondly, again, and I'll keep this brief, because I know we're going late, I would get rid of the distinction between private event and a public event. If the public wants to hold any kind of festivity or feat on town property, they should be required to provide the same kind of tip service and indemnity for liability, no matter how many people attend. And otherwise, you're just going to get into a situation where, well, we thought there were going to be fewer than 10, 20 people, but it turned out we had 100. Again, I make these suggested changes, and this is, I don't want to get into an argument with the chair about town council and opinion, but I do want the chair to recognize that I appreciate how he tried to chart a middle course that might attract votes and sympathies from the colleagues. So I hope the chair recognizes my suggested changes, not as criticisms, but as compliments.
I do, of course. And you're proposing basically a different, stricter compromise, which would be basically alcohol is allowed on town property, but only with the most severe restrictions, namely tip certification and the insurance that we proposed.
I reject that language. I don't consider them severe.
All right.
I mean, I think that they're reasonable under the circumstances. And my point here is, everybody should get insurance. Everybody should be tip certified of serving alcohol. But I don't see a reason to draw a distinction between 20 and 20 or more. It's going to be impossible to police. That's my point.
Well, I was thinking about when I wrote. I want to hear from Courtney.
First of all, I think your first draft is excellent. and I really thank you for taking the time to think it through carefully and make a stab at this. And I understand that you feel strongly about this, and I have a lot of respect for that. And I also have a lot of respect for our town council and their opinions. I would like to echo some of what Mr. Ryan said, that I would like to see a way to allow something that doesn't feel like we're killing the fun. So...
How do you do that without increasing liability?
So you used the phrase unnecessary risk. And I'm not sure it's unnecessary risk. So look at the gathering that we had here this evening. This is a selectmen's meeting, and we had this lovely town event. And it wasn't appropriate to serve champagne, of course. But that's the kind of gathering that we might have in town. And it might be the kind of gathering where we're allowed to have a little something, you know, and a tipple. And so maybe that needs to be, I mean, I actually like the distinction between a private event, which has a limited guest list and it's not closed, it's not open to the public. And so you have that group takes responsibility for themselves. And if they are required to have a, you know, I think having, at some point, hiring a bartender for something very small becomes prohibitive, and the user will go elsewhere. And that could be fine. That could be one way to restrict it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Are you saying you like the first draft and would vote for it, or are you saying the first draft was a good first step, but I want something more liberal?
The second one.
The second one?
Yes.
So we have two people who want something more liberal than the first draft. One person, probably two, who want something less liberal than the first draft, or at the most that liberal. And Mr. Burke, who seems to be going toward more restrictive. Mm-hmm. Is that about right?
My point here is, if we're going to address this issue, and the sense of the board is no more alcohol on town property with respect to certainly town boards, town employees, etc., then yeah, I don't think that the ceremonial event is worth keeping around.
Mr. Wrigley, do you want to say something here?
There's nothing I would say that would change the course of events, or I think provide any wisdom that beyond what's being stated. Reasonable people can disagree about this, and I think you can take reasonable prescribed protections under the law to allow some prescribed and identified functions that would allow limited alcohol. At the same time, you're not exposed to liability if you don't have the event with alcohol. I mean, that's perfect protection. So I can see someone wanting to argue that point.
You know, one of the things, you know, that, and I was involved in it for years, was Springfest dance. We did it for many years. In retrospect, all right, right now, back then, we didn't get any additional liability insurance, which I would definitely say we should now, if we were to hold something like that, right? At the same time, I could be convinced that maybe the town should not be selling alcohol. However, the BYOB, things like that, I've gotten to know an awful lot of the people in social gatherings at functions like that we have had in the past. And I don't want to be killing off the little community spirit that we have right now on certain things. When people get together, they work hard, and then they have a few beers
I believe in community spirit, Tom, but you're talking about a loophole that you can drive a truck through. And town council addresses it directly and says it's a bad idea.
And
The
the thing...
the fire department event was a BYOB thing,
Mhm.
and we got lucky. And the insurance is not the magic bullet. All insurance means is that maybe you have another pocket to pay it. The insurance company works as hard as they can to find a way not to pay.
Mhm.
But what it also means is that the public managers, the employees who were there will be in depositions for years in that suit. They will waste hours and hours of time. And I just don't think it's worth it. I think we can find other ways. I believe in community spirit too, but I think we can find other ways. I don't mean to be a wet towel on this whole thing,
Mhm.
but
I know.
the world has changed, and we are without a doubt behind the times. Our neighbors do not go as far as you were talking about. And they go too far, according to town council.
Well, and the thing is, as Brian said, I think our lawyers get to paid to say no on certain things. Now...
You're going to be singing a different tune when we get a lawsuit.
And the thing is, I think we can make some compromises, all right? I agree that we need, or we probably should make some changes. So I'm not poo-pooing the whole idea. As a matter of fact, I do compliment you for taking the bull, by the horns on this and bringing it to the forefront, all right? Because, just some of the things that have come out, when Maureen dug it up, that, I'll call it, the Springfest dances years ago. We probably should have had additional insurance, because I was horrified to find out that we probably were not covered because we were selling alcohol.
Why don't we do, again, I don't think insurance even starts to solve the problem.
Well, a lot of the stuff, part of the memo that you would put together for June 11th, and some of the other information that Maureen had put together, takeaway, it would be wise for town groups to always purchase a rider for alcohol if it's going to be served.
That's if you're going to allow it, right.
Right, if you're going to allow it. Okay, $50 to $80, and I would expect a function where we might have 200 people, like a big dance, to be more expensive than that.
Why don't we do this, just so we can get out of here at a reasonable hour? Let me see if anybody in the audience has any comment. But I'm leaning toward you and Courtney try to draft something else up. I will tell you right now, I don't think I'm going to vote for whatever you draft, if it's along the lines you just discussed. Because I wasn't sure I was going to vote for the thing I drafted. And you're talking about something that goes beyond even what our neighbors do. So, but draft something up and see if it gets 3 votes. That's the only fair thing.
One further comment.
Yes.
Insurance, whether it's for town employees or someone else using town property, can still involve us in some sort of extended activity. I do not necessarily equate the word community spirit with alcoholic spirits. I think that there are ways to have convivial activities that do not rely on intoxicating elements, whether they are legal. And I throw this other specter out again, because I would much prefer a very simple up and down vote that we just have no alcohol on town property, period.
Well, make the motion, see how many votes it gets.
Well, I don't expect, I'll do it.
Let's see.
All right, I move to adopt a policy prohibiting alcoholic beverages in any form, intoxicating, so it's not beverages. I want to include marijuana, however that's worded. And legal intoxicants on any town property by any entity.
Illegal ones were okay then.
So you're basically...
I'm just kidding, Don.
What you're doing is you're moving what town council has recommended.
Yes.
Which is no liquor or other intoxicants on town property.
Period.
Is there a second?
I'll second for the purposes of discussion because I don't want Mr. Hawks to be silenced on the issue at this point. Unless the chair would like to table this further discussion for another night.
No, the chair wants an opportunity to vote on this. Because this is the question, whether we ignore town council's advice or not. And I think it's a very good idea to test it.
Because if this is just where we are, then we all have other things, you folks do, than coming up with something that I'm gonna vote against anyway.
I agree.
So that's my motion, it's been seconded.
So, further discussion. Motion is to follow town council's advice and no liquor or other intoxicants on town property.
Does that include, you're including private functions, everything?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And I just suggest to the chair that when you say follow town councils, yes, I think that's his ultimate recommendation. But like all attorneys, there's a little give there. But
I think Don has his own motion here.
Yeah, and I don't see that give. I understand the motion.
yeah, and yes, exactly. But the way it was characterized.
The way it was characterized was accurate.
Yeah.
The motion, we cannot recommend any policy other than one prohibiting the consumption of alcohol at town-sponsored events on town property. And I think that then he did a later one. Let's leave it at this. Let's leave it at this. I'm sorry. That is what town council, let's leave it at prohibiting the consumption of alcohol at town-sponsored events on town property. Town council is including friends organizations in that. Is that your motion, Mr. Hawks?
I
I think Don would like to say he doesn't want any event on town property with intoxicants.
Intoxicants.
That's what he's saying. It's
Yes.
not council, it's not, it's
You
him.
don't need to say legal, because
Okay.
illegal you can't have anyway.
Mr. Hawks' motion, which has been seconded for purposes of discussion, is no alcohol or other intoxicants on town property. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by nay.
Nay.
Is there another motion? One, to prohibit alcohol on town property for town-sponsored events, including friends of organizations.
You just made it. Get a second. and then we
Second.
just-
Motion been made by the chair to prohibit alcohol on town-sponsored events on town property, including friends organization events, essentially to follow town council's advice. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to follow town council's advice, prohibiting alcohol on town-sponsored events on town property. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, by nay.
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 Then it's up to one of the three of you to draft something. Until that happens, I can speak for myself. I'm voting against all liquor licenses on town property.
I will as well.
And I'm not putting the item on the agenda again until somebody tells me that they have something to discuss.
Fair enough.
Okay. Good, thank you. Town administrator's report, which we did get in writing, but I think, and we covered a lot of it
Yeah,
in
we
the
did.
preliminary.
I can finish up quickly. I did want to apprise the board with regard to the Lower Village project that at the moment, the latest figures I have and schedule I have, on schedule, the total estimated cost for completion is less than the total amount appropriated. But more importantly for me at this moment, I wanted to give public thanks to our Representative Kate Holden, because we had reached a choke point down there with respect to an Eversource utility, underground Eversource utility line that was discovered, and trenching was there, and it was one that would have forced us on a bolt-on workaround from that utility line if it wasn't relocated. And our attempts to schedule something with Eversource, and this isn't a criticism of Eversource, because they're extremely busy, as most utilities are, for a lot of reasons that we're aware of. And they were taking, since what happened in North Andover and Lawrence last year, the gas line explosion, they've done the right thing by extending the scope of work that requires engineering before they'll approve even their own work. And even this small, simple, straightforward relocation of a line was going to require 6 weeks of engineering, which would have killed us. We'd have been done. We've been repeating what we did last year, which is unfinishing it going through the winter. So I asked Kate whether she might at least ask Eversource whether they, under the circumstances, and again, you can imagine how many communities were asking for the same thing, or even private companies. And with her direct influence and involvement, Eversource agreed to get their project engineered and get out here and get that relocation in time for us to carry on. So that's really the purpose of me letting you know that. And tomorrow night and Thursday night, there'll be nighttime paving for some obvious reasons. And I think that's a good thing. So I don't want to say we're getting there. We're getting there. I did want to mention, we've got 3 hires going on. The processes, they're underway, all have been advertised and the rest. I would like, my public safety working group for hires will be in place for the superintendent's public safety, but Mike was serving as superintendent of that, given that that's the position here. I'd like to have Bruce Fletcher replace the superintendent position and hiring a new superintendent. Otherwise, the rest of the pieces are in place, the rest of the people. Mr. Ryan serves as liaison to the Board of Selectmen, be the police chief, fire chief, myself, and Bruce Fletcher, coming to you with a recommendation for a hire at the end of the process. I would like 2 of you to serve with me in finding a new treasurer collector. I don't need that decision tonight, but and I first want to know, you can send me separate emails as whether you're interested in doing that or not, and then I can pick it and we can get forward with that. We have applications for all 3 positions, and in 2 positions, rather, third one we filled tonight, the police chief. We have in-house candidates for both, and so we'll go through that evaluative process and get those hires in.
When is the treasurer's vacancy effective?
October 1st, October 4th, early October. And for that interim period of time, we have an assistant treasurer collector, and the office will continue. I'll be more involved in some of the more treasurer things, but comfortable that we can do that. Shouldn't take us too long. The closing on applications for the treasurer collector is the 13th rather, end of this week. On the superintendent, it's the end of it's the 20th of September. Okay, so it'll be a week later. And so if you're interested, let me know in serving with me on the treasurer collector, and we'll keep on keeping on. We did have a conference call with Standard & Poor's. We talked about an industry after what happened with the recession. I've spoken more with Standard & Poor's representatives out of the global office in Boston in the last few years than we ever did in my first 15 years, and that's a good thing. So we've got that borrowing coming up. The 3 that we're bundling together, it's $2.4 million total, and the conference call went well. So I had treasurer collector and the assistant treasurer collector, just so she can become involved in the conversations and nature of the financing and budgeting, that questions that are asked by Julie, as well with me, our financial advisor from Hilltop, Mary Carney, who's on the call, and then 3 people from Standard & Poor's. And they go through all of our financial statements and everything from OPEB to, our unreserved stored assets, to our budgeting and our forecasting and our policies. And I did tell them, so publicly disclosing to you, I have a policy that I want you to bless soon, because it'll be a requirement in short order, and I wanted Standard & Poor's know that I've got one drafted for fraudulent risk policy, and I'll come to you with that within the next meeting or 2 once I dress it up some, and we'll have that. So that'll be our 5th financial policy that we have, and it went well for us, and we've got an estimate on our free cash that will be certified soon, but I've got a good handle on what that will be. Because we spent a large sum of free cash and, as you know, dipped into our stabilization fund. So those two together are our stored assets, or that amount as a percentage against our current budget expenditures that we've been trying to maintain 10% plus or minus. So even with all of the money we spent, including the $435,000 under stabilization, which we haven't tapped in several years, and more than higher usual amount in free cash, we're gonna replenish all of it.
All of it?
All of it.
So we're gonna be...
We'll be just about spot on for next year. I had explained to you that I had $280,000 that was determined to be free cash from the previous year's town meeting, because our town meeting minutes reflected it as free cash. It was passed as a motion as available funds. And so the accountant submitted it for that, so I had $280,000 sitting there that's ours, not to be, so it became free cash this year. So that was a $280,000 bump that we had, and we're gonna have $400,000 to $500,000 otherwise for that, so we're gonna be back to about 10% spot on for that. So that's good news. So we're still pretty flush when it comes to stored assets on that. We approached almost $2 million in unused levy capacity. That got down to about 1.5, still well above $1 million. We've been between $1 million and $2 million on unused levy capacity for the last several years, and that continued this year. So we keep on keeping on. But so I'm expecting we'll get AAA certification, and by the comments we got from those folks today, they like the fact that bumped up OPEB, but I said at this point, from 50 to 100, now to 235 that I booked, I said, we'll level fund that at least, maybe some more, but if the budget won't support it with other things, and they were good with that, so OPEB is there. So
Did I see in your report you're also looking for 2 selectmen for the lieutenant search? Or did I make that up?
No, it's not.
I may have said that.
Yep.
So for those of you, for both of those positions, put in if you're interested.
Yeah, so please, everybody, pay attention.
Well, I was wondering if you really were looking for one additional, or for the police lieutenant.
No, because to tell you the truth, it's gonna come straight to my office.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the other positions, when we're hiring officers, we start with the in-house down at the police station. And I'm not gonna have, I don't know how to say, I'm not gonna have, patrolmen deciding on who them bringing to us who they think the finalists for the lieutenants would be. That's not logical or reasonable. So it's gonna start at my table. And so I want 2 selectmen with me.
And what's your time frame for making a recommendation on that?
Well, that one's got a little further out because, and I'll be discussing it more with you in the future, but I'm looking to try to promote from within on an officer that's currently a part-time special but a full-time dispatcher. We've been having trouble finding enough qualified and experienced officers out on the street. We've got some good folks here. Other communities are beginning to do that because they're finding the same thing. We've got a person that's interested, qualified, well-respected, and the rest of it. And I like to give it on the street. We can get a 270-day waiver from the state so we can get on the street and begin full-time, backfill the dispatch, and maybe send them to the academy on us. And that's what I'm going to be proposing, but I haven't nailed down all the moving parts yet, but I will soon. So that's a little further out.
No, but the recommendation on a lieutenant, again, what's your goal?
With all deliberate speed, I don't have any, we get started, we're gonna promote from within, so we'll post down there for the handful that are gonna, so it's not like we're going out the door. A month or 6 weeks probably after we get started, we should be able to make a recommendation.
Tom?
No, I was just gonna say, I was just gonna bring up the same thing that, we were talking about lieutenant and then went off onto patrolman, and I wanted to bring it back to lieutenant.
Right.
So.
Okay, questions for the town administrator or anything else? Mr. Hobbs?
Just because it was referenced, you didn't bring it up here, but you referenced it earlier in public comment, and the chairman has brought it up, so it's not to discuss, but can either of you tell me, because I'm going tomorrow night to the Lake Boone Commission meeting, which I anticipate some of the same concerns being brought up there. I intend to go into the Board of Health meeting on Thursday. Can you outline for me the intent of what you see as an agenda item on the 24th?
Just a report from them on where they stand, much like we've done with other departments like the library. They obviously have some big stuff going on right now, EEE, PFAS, and the lake. Like I said, kind of hoping that by the 24th, EEE is a thing of the past, but PFAS and
For
the
this
lake.
year.
Right, and PFAS and the lake, I'm assuming that they're not going to be things of the past. I'd like to see it focus not just on what's going on and where they stand this year, but on next year.
And going forward, I think that was my idea.
Right.
Hoping that it would be more all-encompassing than just what happened this year. Thank you.
I mentioned to Cindy just before the meeting, for example, everybody seems to be focusing on, well, let's get some tests going and open the lake. Why can't we get quicker tests? My concern is something different, which is my understanding is that the lake closed, or the beach or the lake closed on the 18th because somebody saw blue-green algae. But then from what I've read, you can get this bacteria in the lake before you even see the blue-green algae. So should we be budgeting something? Should we be planning on doing tests before you even see something? I don't know. I want to get them to address that kind of thing going forward.
I'll just throw out for historical reference, it might inform some discussion for that meeting.
Right.
Sometime whenever, how long has Jack Wallace been gone? 3 years?
Probably 3 to 5.
Sometime during, so I've been on the board 7 years, so it was in the first 2 years of my membership on this board. We had one of these incidents. You could see the green gold flecks. I'd never heard of cyanobacteria until Jack Wallace kind of instructed us as to what it was and how dangerous it could become. And I know it was during that period, because he said, "Hey, Hoxie, can you take me out on your boat so I can take some samples?" Which he took. So in my pontoon boat, he took samples in basins 1, 2, and 3, and he sent them somewhere to get tested. I would think one of the things we might want to find out from the Board of Health, ask Jack, where did you send it? I think the people's concerns that I'm getting.
Let's have this discussion in 2 weeks when the Board of Health is in the room. One thing I don't like about what's been going on is everybody seems to want to talk about it without the Board of Health. The Board of Health are the only people who can do something about it. And from everything I've seen, including everything you told me offline, Don, they're working on it very hard. And I don't see any misfeasance or malfeasance. And I don't like the
non-feasance.
It was delay.
or nonfeasance or unnecessary delay. And we can go over all of that in 2 weeks, but I don't see it. And I've looked into it in the past few days, and it does not appear to be there, and it's completely unfair to try to talk about it without them in the room. And I did not want to call them into the room tonight because they are in the middle of it right now. And the last thing that they need is to have to spend time preparing for a selectmen's meeting where that isn't going to productively help solve either issue when they have a meeting in 2 nights and they can address all of these valid concerns. So I don't want any more discussion about this topic tonight. We had plenty at the beginning of the meeting, and it was good. Thankfully led by a very reasonable resident. But let's leave it for 2 weeks. Let's let them get their work done and then tell us how it went, and maybe more importantly, talk about future years. Okay? Okay.
And just
Mr.
one
Ryan.
time, I don't want to beat that up. I was just gonna say, one thing is Don being on Lake Boone Commission, if there are no signs, that's one of the things I picked up on. It may be worth mentioning to the Board of Health to put up a sign at the public landings, because people from out of town that use them may not be aware.
They were discussing that today.
Okay, so maybe it just moved then, you know.
Yeah, okay. Liaison reports.
Run free.
Am I dismissed?
Run free.
Yes, you are, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Have a safe trip.
Mr. Burke, so are you.
In 2 weeks, we discussed draining Lake Boone.
Jim Dunlap, that was his platform years ago.
Well, if we don't get that work done on a dam, what happened?
I apologize for the flippancy. I'll just say that I tried to, ZBA had a new member, or a new candidate for membership, and they floated his resume. They were going to hear him last night. I guess they did hear him. Maybe our town clerk can tell us a little more about that. But I got there at 7:40 because it was scheduled for 8 o'clock. The kennel issue was there. God, that was, and I left at about 8:40. I would have stayed longer, but our town clerk told me that the candidate wasn't a town resident yet. So I guess they interviewed him, but I don't know what happened. I'm happy to hear from the town clerk. Otherwise, it's been the summer. I don't think there's been much liaisoning. Hopefully I'll have, I would like to see that article
Okay.
about the FCC.
I meant to bring it,
Maybe there's an extra copy out there.
it was pretty good.
I commend the town, the town Board of Selectmen chair for reading that stuff.
I zeroed in on it after your,
Especially because I didn't explain it well enough, so.
explained everything that you were trying to say. But it made what you said make sense. Mr. Hawks.
I've been out of town for good part of recently. I'll just point out that of particular note tomorrow night, it's taken 2 months to have the first meeting of the LBC. And I think that is not, I got my own thoughts on that. And it's not for lack of people trying to schedule it, but one of the items that is on there tomorrow night is reorganization of the commission, and I think the outcome of that will determine a lot of what may happen in the next year.
Okay.
I'll report back.
I don't have very much other than the library trustees have been attempting to create a building committee, and they have been getting, they have not taken the steps, the ministerial legal steps that you need to take to properly create a committee. The town clerk's office sent them some fairly clear instructions at the end of July. I recently met with the chair of the trustees. I know that he met with the town clerk yesterday. I have some hopes that all of this will be getting done very soon. The good news, pardon?
Thursday.
Oh, good. Thursday what? Thursday?
They have a meeting this Thursday. They have a meeting and everything.
Oh, of the trustees, not the building committee.
Correct, and then
Right.
it will all be in place, and I actually think it is.
Okay, good.
moving forward.
So.
We're gonna hang in there.
So that building committee should, so on our next agenda, on our next agenda, we should probably put appointment of a selectman to the Randall Library Building Committee, because that may be timely then. We may have what we need then, and I'm volunteering to do that. I was on the last.
I think
what
they're
was it?
appointing, I think they took their recommendation, they're appointing the selectmen at their meeting on Thursday. No, because they're appointing, just like they're appointing the capital planning person too.
And the FinCom.
They're doing on them all.
I thought they were waiting for us to, all the more reason they need to tell us what they're doing.
Didn't you guys make a recommendation to them?
No. No, we've been waiting.
I thought you did it last week.
No. They haven't even told us they created the committee. That's what Maureen was saying.
Well,
They
that's
haven't.
all, everything's happening in one night. So if you.
I don't think so.
Well,
You guys can't make a
then-
recommendation tonight?
No, it's not on the agenda. then that's fine. If they somehow appoint me on Thursday, then it's done. It's very much like when the planning board created the Lower Village Subcommittee and appointed me, although they did give us the courtesy of asking the Board of Selectmen, I think they did, who they want. Let's just leave it alone.
Yeah.
But, and I've said this to the chair of the trustees, there's nothing preventing any town board from creating a subcommittee, but there's certain hoops that they just have to go through, and they have to communicate, and they're not used to that, and it really needs more communication on that end, on both ends maybe, although your email was very clear. So that's about it. I also, just so everybody knows, I'm going to be calling Otley Therarenson and Chris Sarno. This is getting back to the South Acton train station issue. So, that's sort of resolved by Acton didn't really change its policies very much. They're just letting whoever had a lease re-up. But what we learned in that whole process was that Acton has a subcommittee on the train station. I didn't even know that. We really should have somebody going to those meetings. I want to talk to Otley and Chris very informally about whether they can start going to some of the meetings. Maybe I can get into the rotation. We can just have somebody there to keep an eye on it and maybe come in and periodically update us on what's going on with the train station. And that's it. Mr. Ryan?
The Town Hall Building Committee is moving forward. We probably have a report to review. I think we may have just gotten one. I haven't had a chance to review it. But hopefully this part of, the first part is coming to an end, hopefully. And should have more information in the not too distant future. While I was out, one of the things, because I was out walking around a lot after being out, and I happened upon the Highway Department and our Assistant Building Inspector, Mr. Hyde, working on a water leak up at the old fire station.
Yes.
And
Water what?
A water leak. And I suppose one of the things that, I actually sent a note to Doug and to Brian that I thought that the highway guys were working with the building department very well. They were talking, they found the leak, It just seemed like the spirit of cooperation that we had for years, but I really saw it firsthand on how well they worked together. The highway department guys were very knowledgeable, and they got the hole dug, they got the leak fixed, and they filled it in.
We did all that without alcohol.
Did it all without alcohol.
That's why I'm not going to heaven, Brian.
Well, and believe you'll laugh, but
Absolutely right.
you'll laugh.
It's not like I'll be there to miss you.
It's true.
But I almost thought about taking them up a six-pack to say, job well done.
That would be okay under the policy as I drafted it. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Because it would have been a celebratory.
You'd be in their
Strike
house
that
or
from the
something.
record.
So.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna take it up the highway department, but I said, nope,
Slow
nope.
right now.
But I just wanted to mention it because I just saw them working very well. The next day, while they were doing the paving, Brian was up there checking on them, but everybody just seemed to be, very knowledgeable and really doing their job. And the highway guys were there without a supervisor there for most of the time, but they knew what they had to do, and they just got the job done.
I heard a little bit about that second and third hand from Kathy and from the library, and my impression was that Doug worked very hard on that because it was quite the puzzle for a few days.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Anyway.
But that's it. I actually took a road trip with Doug to go down, get the parts, and the highway department guys were playing junior plumber. Doug got the parts, they put them together, and they got but basically they got the job done without a lot of fuss and muss.
Okay. And I should have said at the beginning of the meeting, glad to see you back on your feet, and congratulations on your granddaughter. We said something at the last meeting, but
I saw that in the minutes, and I appreciate that.
Good to see you here. Courtney, you want to take us home?
The Town Center Park, it continues to progress in its development and is nearing completion without, they're waiting for grass to grow in, so it's still not open to visitors, but it's coming along nicely, and there is hope to have a opening celebration near the end of October.
Very good. Is that it?
Yep.
Will alcohol be served?
Lots of it. I think they said something about several kegs.
Yeah, several kegs. All right. Is there a
You're gonna
motion?
have to do the slide.
Second. And carries unanimously, 9:10. Thank you, everybody.